Hi, today we are going to talk about animal research projects. Hi, my name is Margaret. Welcome to my channel, Homeschool Honey. I'm an ex-elementary school teacher turned homeschooling mom of two fantastic kids, ages almost 10 and almost 13. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about an animal research project that we did. And this is something that I came up with, and it's something that you can also come up with for yourself, for your kids. And if you're on Teachers Pay Teachers, it's something that would be great to upload to try to bring in a little extra money every month. But I will link this down below, the Blackline Master for this, so if you're interested in doing this with your children. My kids really enjoyed it, and the awesome thing about it is that it's really well laid out, so that if you wanted to pull it up again and the kids research a different animal, it's completely easy to do. So one thing I really like about this method is it's great for any age level of kid, because you can scale it to make it a little bit easier, or you can scale it up and make it a little more challenging if they need more writing as far as the research part goes. So I'll flip it down and we'll talk about the two different animals that my children researched and the ways that we did it for our first research project. So this is the research project. Again, I love my spiral binder. I'm going to link it down below. It's one of my favorite things as a homeschool mom. So it starts off with a cover page, and one child chose to research an arapaima, which is a favorite, and my other child chose to research the poison dart frog. This was a really interesting, I learned a lot, we all learned a lot. So it starts off with a cover page. My children this time chose to do a lot of printing off of images from the internet, but there were some that I insisted that they attempt to draw the pictures in. So you can choose either way for your child. So the book starts off with the animal name. I thought it was important that they start learning the scientific names of things, or just to introduce that that's something that's out there. The scientific names are out there. And then introducing certain vocabulary to do with animals, invertebrate or vertebrate, and then finding out its status. So this one, the status is unknown, and we learned that because they're kind of hard to track. So same thing with our poison dart frog. We ended up learning the Latin name. The different frogs, the different poison dart frogs have different names, so we got to narrow it down as we went. And so my child ended up researching the specific one, this green poison dart frog. So this, because we had to research the Latin name, we learned that there are different varieties there, and they are different names. So then again, the drawing there. Next is the kingdom, species, phylus, etc. Again, I did this because I just want them to recognize that this is something that exists. So we had a good discussion about what this means and where it would veer off, say for us, because we are in the kingdom Animalia. So this was a really interesting exercise. I wanted my children to be introduced to the idea of the kingdom, phylum, class, order, etc. And it made it really interesting because we were able to compare that our arapaima and our poison dart frog both started in the kingdom Animalia, in the chordata phylum, and then that's where it starts veering off into different branches. And so it was really interesting for us to explore that. And you could even break it down even further and say, okay, what other things are in this class? What other things are in this order? We didn't take it that far on this research project, but we might on our next one. So the next step was they had to find where in the world their animal lives, and our arapaima lives in the Amazon River and rivers in that region. And same thing with this, again, because we had to narrow it down to one specific poison dart frog, that was where it lived. Now there are poison dart frogs in other places, but we had to narrow it down. Okay, so the next, again, my kids they don't love drawing, so this was the drawing of the habitat. And probably on the next one, I might talk a little more about, we need to take a little more pride in our work. this is murky waters. I knew what my child was trying to draw, because there was an area in the Amazon River that there's a really fresh water, clear, and there's a really murky water, and they don't meet. It's really interesting. But that's what was being drawn here. So, and then my other child decided to download a picture of the habitat instead of actually drawing it out. Then next is the anatomy. So I printed off a picture for my child to label the different anatomy of the animal. You could have your child draw it again and then label it. So at this point, I'm just gonna stay on one animal. Next is a size comparison, and I wanted them to compare it to a human size. So compared to a human, how big is this? So here's an arapaima compared to a human. This is quite large, as you can see. And the next one is the life cycle. Now, one of my children chose to draw it out, and then my other drew a picture. And so yes, this is a picture of the arapaima has the small fry in its mouth. This is something else we learned. So next up, they had to find out about the habits of the animal. Is it nocturnal or diurnal? And again, this was something that I just want them introduced to that concept. And this is another area where this is our first time doing this, so I didn't have them writing out a whole lot more. But in the future, when we do it more, I might have them writing a sentence. I might have them writing more than one sentence. So if we want to move this into a research paper, we could take our information here and type it out onto a paper, into a paper, and flesh it out more. Does it hibernate? No. And then we talked about mating and partnering, if there was a ritual like birds have dance, you know, and do they mate for life? And this was super interesting because we didn't know that that arapaima actually make nests, and they guard their offspring, and they're mouth brooders, which again, it's new information for me too. So the next part that we talk about is, do the parents raise the young? Are they able to survive right away? And is there a metamorphosis? So again, this is something that, depending on the animal, this will change. And I put a big area here, so you know, as we continue doing this, they can really flesh it out. I can start asking for more information. And then here, draw the young in stages if it applies. So here it did not apply because they come out looking like just little ones of the big one. Next, where and how do they nest, and do they have a specific place to raise their young? So we answered that. And this again is something else that you could have your kids type out. You could expect more. We drew a picture. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, depending on the animal, are there stories and myths that include that animal. And so this animal actually did have a myth, and we decided to print it off and put it on as such. Then we talk about camouflage. My child did not draw anything about their camouflaging. Colors and varieties of the animal, depending on what animal your child chooses, they can include that. And on this one, I asked them to draw the food web. The reason I thought this was important is because I want them to think about what are the predators and the prey of this particular animal that they have chosen. And here's where they would write it out. Probably if I redid this, I would have lines so that they would have more space to write neatly sentences. So this was another thing that I thought was pretty interesting. So depending on the animal that they chose, to consider the adaptations by this animal. Some animals have way more adaptations than others. The arapaima happens to come up and gulp oxygen. They have gills as well, but they also breathe air that they come up and gulp. It helps them to live in the murky, slow-moving rivers. So defense mechanisms, this is where they would talk about the defense mechanisms of the animal. How are they in captivity versus the wild? So here we have an actual picture from when we visited Moody Gardens in Galveston and saw the actual arapaima in captivity there. That's my child's head. And then different facts that we learned about the arapaima. This is Jeremy Wade, if you don't know. Jeremy Wade makes really cool videos about river monsters. And then the page that did not get included here is the source page. So in the future, my kids will be citing the sources but we did not do it on our first research project. So let me see if there were any pages that this child included that the other did not, because there are a few other pages. That's their young. There were a few other pages that I have created, but it didn't fit into what we had as far as this. Facts, size comparison, life cycle, camouflage, myths and stories, anatomy, food web. Now, we didn't do this all in one day. I just want to point that out. We did this over probably a week. I think we did about 4 or 5 pages a day. And this was most of our learning for that week, because we did a lot of research, we did a lot of reading, writing, and so it took up a good amount of our day or our learning time to complete this activity. So this is one of those things that, you know, if we start getting burned out with our curriculum, we veer off and do something more like this, some research projects, some science activities. So that's what we did on this one. Again, I'll link this down below if you're interested in doing this with your child. My kids actually had a lot of fun with it. I know they don't look like pristine and, you know, some, I don't know. I don't feel like they have to look perfect. For me, it's the process, not the product, if you know what I mean. So the process of them learning these really cool facts, the process of them learning to research an animal is more important than them delivering a product that looks print ready, you know what I mean? And the fact that they enjoyed it and were not being hounded about your handwriting is, you know, ugh. So as we move forward, I might point out 1 or 2 things like, hey, you know, on this one, this is some good things. This is something maybe you could work on for your next project. And so we build and get better as we go along from there. All right. I hope you enjoyed this animal research project activity. And again, even if you're a public schooler, this is something that would be a lot of fun to do in the public school as well. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for coming. Bye.